Peace be with you. Dear friends, welcome to Living Flame Podcast website and Facebook group. Gospel Reflections for Tuesday in the first week of the Ordinary Time. Gospel according to Mark chapter 1 verses 21 to 28. It was the Sabbath, so naturally Jesus went to the synagogue to pray, worship, and perhaps enjoy a time of fellowship with other Jewish believers. This was something that Jesus had been doing this all of his time. It was what his mother Mary and his earthly father Joseph had taught him to do each and every Sabbath. Attending synagogue, spending time in community, praying, worshiping, and learning had become a part of Jesus' spiritual life. If you wanted to find Jesus on the Sabbath, you would need to go around one of the local synagogues because that is where you would find him. Mark doesn't make a big deal out of that fact. He just records it. Even though Jesus is more than 40 miles from his hometown Nazareth, he doesn't take Sabbath off. Instead, he gets up, eats his breakfast, gets dressed, and then leads his disciples to this particular synagogue in Capernaum. It also appears that Jesus may have been asked to come and speak at this particular synagogue. Being a well-known preacher, teacher, storyteller, certainly he was invited. Perhaps Jesus' preaching and ministry was already making quite a stir, and a number of people around Capernaum wanted to hear him speak. More than likely, the ruler of the synagogue had sent words to Jesus back in Nazareth that he wanted the young rabbi to come and share with his congregation. Now, Mark doesn't tell us if the synagogue was packed in anticipation of Jesus being there or if it was one of those low Sabbaths because the regular speaker was either not going to be present or was not going to speak. You know how it is when it is announced that a special speaker is going to come. Some people scatter like the four winds while others change their plans to be in attendance. What mattered to Mark was that he wanted us to know that all of creation was already changing because of Jesus. This man called Jesus from Nazareth was stirring things up in ways that no one had witnessed for hundreds of years. This morning, we find ourselves just 20 verses into Mark's Gospel, and already he has taken us through the ministry of John the Baptist, Jesus' baptism, the wilderness trials, and calling of Jesus' first few disciples. Mark begins his gospel with breakneck speed, and he doesn't slow down very much. He is on a mission to get us into the heart of that story. And the heart of the story is that in Jesus, God in flesh, the good God of covenant and of creation has showed up. In this living, breathing human being, God's presence is very much alive in a new and amazing way. Israel's long-awaited Messiah has come to rescue, redeem, and restore the hearts of people everywhere. So Jesus is here in the synagogue sharing his thoughts on that day's passage. Since we don't know the exact time of the year, we don't know exactly what prescribed passage was being read. What we know is that the minute Jesus started speaking, people sat up and listened like they hadn't listened either before or sometime. Jesus' words were powerful. They were full of authority and spiritual insights. I'm sure they didn't expect him to speak that way. After all, Jesus' reputation was that of being a carpenter or carpenter's son. It isn't hard to imagine that Jesus had at some time worked in this area. 2 days' walk wasn't that far, and it was common for carpenters to travel much further to get work during that time. So when we look at this gospel passage, dear friends, Jesus' first appearance or one of the many appearances recorded by Mark in the local synagogue. Jesus' fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. Dear friends, we have a mandate too to proclaim the good news of Christ. Today, Jesus uses our eyes, our tongue, our ears, our hands, and our feet to proclaim the good news and spread the good news of God's kingdom. Let us ask the Lord, reading this particular gospel passage, that the Lord's power may enter into us. As Jesus cast out the unclean spirit, and Jesus, who asked that spirit to be silent and come out of him, is a clear signal to all of us that his word is powerful. So when we read the word of Jesus and meditate on it, every evil will be out of us, and we are capable of casting out evil even from our surroundings. And that is how we establish God's kingdom here on earth. God bless you.